Spotlight is back, and in this fourth iteration, we have an incredible array of indie artists and their art to introduce you to.
The gold standard is a father and a mother creating a family. That's what was ordained by nature and nature's God.
Historically, in the Catholic Church, LGBT people have been largely invisible.
Homosexual activity is sinful.
And when they are talked about, they're talked about in terms of sinfulness.
You don't want the gay liberation movement to morph into something like the Ku Klux Klan.
This is the weaponization of ministry to make us believe that we are not the people God made us to be.
If we can't imagine ourselves in the image of God, that does irreparable spiritual harm to us.
Iconography is important because we believe in a God that we want to have a relationship with.
This project welcomes LGBTQ plus people by depicting Jesus as suffering with and for them.
When we put out a casting call, we got about 500 submissions.
I had the unfortunate event of being kicked out of my church.
People like me weren't welcome in that space.
We're using the power of art to help LGBTQ people and create change.
Human beings can change things. You can change things.
I was doing youth ministry, and then they changed direction, and they kicked out all the LGBTQ people.
And it's just exhausting.
It's unforgivable that we put these kinds of burdens on one another.
The LGBTQ community is under attack. It's really impossible to underestimate the impact that the Catholic Church has had in a very detrimental way.
The old ways have to change.
When you persecute the LGBT person, you're persecuting Christ.
No one can silence you. No one can silence me except myself.
These images tell the story of God and our LGBTQ sisters and brothers.
That is beautiful.
To see LGBTQ suffering reflected in the story of Jesus.
This is the stuff that I should have seen when I was younger.
Oh, how gorgeous.
These images can be life-giving.
This is beautiful.
For many documentarians, the creative spark begins by telling the most personal of stories, and there is nothing more personal than one's faith. Joe Compton sat down with the filmmakers Yuval David and Mark McDermott, who bravely explored that very subject, documenting their community struggle for acceptance. As we turn the spotlight on the documentary, Wonderfully Made. I'm kind of curious. I mean, you kind of do go over it a little bit in the film, but kind of give everybody a sense of what this journey's been like, and how it all began, and why you're taking on what you're taking on.
Well, I mean, this journey began because that's my approach to art and advocacy. It's something I do throughout my life in entertainment and media and advocacy, how to meld creativity and artistry with activism and advocacy. I even teach a course at Georgetown University about that, and teach this workshop about art and advocacy to LGBTQ organizations and Jewish and different interfaith organizations, and arts and acting and filmmaking programs. So let's just start by saying this is very on brand. But how did it start? It started because my husband, Mark, who's the executive producer of this film and project, was online looking for an image that represented his specific identity, his specific intersectional identity, being an LGBTQ Catholic man. And he wasn't finding anything that really spoke to him. So I said, let's just create it ourselves. Let's create something for you, because it won't only be for you, it'll be for anybody who, like you, is looking for that iconography, that art that can speak to them. We know that an image, what is it? What do we say? An image speaks louder than 1,000 words. Something
Right.
like that. So
Yeah.
to create something like that. And the project just blossomed from there. How do you represent an LGBTQIA plus Jesus? How do you represent Jesus with, on the side of, as an ally, whatever it is, of the LGBTQ community? It can't be one person. And we then turned to our contacts, the people we know, to start to get advice or bring them on board or see who could join us in this project. Mark started to speak to all of these Catholic leaders, people he knows and interfaces with regularly. I spoke to LGBTQ advocates and activists and leaders, and then pulled in Brendan Cannon, who is a longtime friend of mine and is also one of the world's top fashion stylists, to say, all right, Brendan, we're going to create a photo shoot. And Brendan is Catholic and is gay. And it was great to just bring people in, and the project just continued to blossom from there. I said, we can't just do a photo shoot. We need to also create a documentary at the same time. And we thought this would be a 10-minute documentary about the creation of an art project. But, you know, doing things, yeah. Yeah, we also budgeted.
And then, Joe, it became 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a half an hour. At most half an hour, then 40 minutes. And no, we had one cut that made it to 70, and then this one's 95. I also wanted to answer the second part of your question, which I'm just going to simplify, is why now? You know, you have several hundred pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation pending around the country right now. Mm-hmm. I think there's been well over 1,000 over the last 4 years. And you're seeing this in pockets around the world as well. And what really drives that? Where does it come from? Fundamentally from people's perspectives on what religion says. And the sort of mantra or saying of our film that you'll see on the posters is seeking change through the power of art. And sometimes, you know, rational words, reasoning don't get a person there. And so we decided, let's just depict iconography in a way it's never been done before. People talk about God is in everybody. Well, what does it look like really? Yeah. And in the Christian tradition, we're sort of stuck with 1,700 years of Jesus as a white guy with blue eyes and blonde hair. And that's just not fair or accurate. It's beautiful, and I'm not denigrating it, but it's not modern. It's not where we are as a people. And the ultimate aim of this project, Why Now, is because you've got kids out on the street homeless because they've been thrown up by their parents. They're suicidal, they got anxiety, they're depression. And so much of it starts with religious ideas that respectfully are headed very much the wrong direction. So it's a critical topic, and it's also timely. It's been getting louder and louder and louder, but we're halfway through a 2-year listening process that Pope Francis ordered, whereby every parish is having listening sessions and where the laity get to express their views. And I've been party to an awful lot of them and read a lot of reports. And the church's attitude towards LGBTQ people is very high, if not number one on the list at every one of these things.
In order to truly do LGBTQ advocacy, we need to look at the root cause of those who are against us or legislating against us, whether they're political leaders, organizational leaders, heads of schools, communities, whatever it might be.
The gold standard is a father and a mother creating a family. That's what was ordained by nature and nature's God.
Britain's Catholic Church intensified its campaign against gay marriage on Sunday.
Father Marcel Guarnizo denied her communion because she is a lesbian.
No, you don't want the gay liberation movement to morph into something like the Ku Klux Klan.
Nie jest to już czerwona, ale tęczowa zaraza.
American popular culture is steadily being inundated with pro-LGBTQ messages.
Stop the church! Everybody gets an opinion and that's yours. They have theirs too. Why don't you move on to a different location?
It's one thing to personally say they don't believe in homosexual, but when they advocate the killing of people, it's just wrong.
The church will be teaching that homosexual activity is sinful until the end of time.
So let's start this process by looking at one of the world's largest religions. And this film, who is this film for? Yes, this film is for LGBTQ Catholics. It's also for LGBTQ people who are not Catholic, even if they're not religious or part of any religion or of any other religion, to really remind the LGBTQ community that there are people of faith who are part of our community. But it's also for the Catholic community, the non-LGBTQ Catholic community, because so many people read these topics and they just see it as a theme or a concept. So we're putting a face to that concept. We're showing them people who have their own challenges and aspirations, even if they're incredibly well-known, pioneering activists from within the church, from the organizational world, or however they pursue their activism. And it's not only about these great leaders in this movement and what they do and what they've achieved, but it's who they are as people. And so many people, our audiences, I want to show them the humanity of all of this, the effects that the issues surrounding this intersectional identity lead to.
In my experience, talking to people about theology and religion and things like that, the people that are the most astute, the ones that listen the most, are usually the theologists themselves. People that you wouldn't expect to kind of be there to listen and give you insight and talk to you about it. Were you guys happily surprised with the people that you were able to talk to?
Well, to some degree, through my work and through some other folks that we know, we found a lot of the leading voices. Certainly not all of them, but the people that we feature in the film are probably many of them the most well-known and have been at this the longest. We did consider trying to find one or more people, including theologians, who would be willing to participate, but who had an opposite view. And we actually could not find anybody. And there was one person in particular that I went back and forth with several times, very respectful emails where we talked an awful lot about theology. I'm not a theologian, but I know quite a bit about it. And ultimately, he respectfully declined because he knew the angle we were going to take. And at the end of the day, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Because those folks have an awful lot of platforms. And we decided, this is our platform. So we focused on our voices through interviews. However, so you saw from the film, we do feature a lot of the opposite voices, just using their own words, their own clips. And so, you get it. You can see what they're doing and saying. So that was how we kind of skinned that cat.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's unique to note is the interviewees that we have in the film are not often seen together in the same panel.
Yeah.
Sometimes not even at the same conference. And it was important to do that, especially for me as the director, to make sure that different voices and different opinions and different approaches towards activism and advocacy and representation are represented within this film. I noticed so many Catholic people were very sensitive, especially those Catholic people who are devout and are very active within the church, to see the amount of sensitivity and careful, like walking on eggshells that they were having there. And I said, let me just sweep away the eggshells. We need to approach this as human beings.
Yeah.
I'm not Catholic, but my husband, Mark, is. I'm Jewish, and I needed to create this space where all of them could speak and share and be vulnerable within their own truth. So I feel like my job was really just creating a platform for them to comfortably share who they are for themselves and for anybody like them. And that same theme of how it started the whole art project. This is an art project for Mark and anybody like him. It was the same approach that I had with every interviewee. This is an opportunity for this interviewee to speak with their own genuine, authentic, vulnerable truth for themselves as a form of maybe therapy or dare I say, coming out with their true thoughts. But it's also for everybody else, for the audiences. So for me, it was a very compelling and intimate space to get to interview these people, to hear what they're saying, and make sure that they knew that it was okay, that their process was wanted and desired. And if they were ever uncomfortable with what they were saying or how they can say it, first of all, to clearly say, only say what you want to say, because there are cameras and microphones here and I'm capturing all of it. But know that you are a leader not only because of what you have done as a pioneer, as somebody who's front lines in whatever the battles are, but you're also a human being who has aspirations and challenges. That's what I want people to connect to, that part of humanity in this. And that's how this can be a film, not just for LGBTQ Catholics. It can be a film for anybody who can resonate with aspirations and challenges. It can be a film for anybody who resonates with aspirations and challenges pertaining to religion and Catholicism and all of these other things. So it was a really beautiful, adventurous experience.
What do you feel like this gave you that you didn't expect going in, that you're going to carry with you now?
I was surprised at how open and welcoming and enthusiastic so many people were. You know, we tried to walk a fine line here with these images. On the one hand, we're shattering tradition, 1,700 years of iconography. On the other hand, it was important for us to try to stick with it a little bit. So we have poses here that everybody could see and understand and relate to. But it's still pretty out there. People they're not used to seeing this, you know. Maybe they've seen a black Jesus, but they haven't seen anything like this before.
Right.
And we didn't really find many people who just really reacted viscerally negatively to it. Now, that said, it's just now starting to become public, and we undoubtedly will. But for the most part, we found amazing enthusiasm for it, including among clergy who, with all respect to them, sometimes have to be careful. And I do respect that, because I'm not looking to put anybody in an awkward spot with where they are. You got to respect that too. And then the other dimension of this was respecting religion. You know, we tried not to create a film that just trashes religion.
Right.
I wouldn't allow it. I mean, I'm Catholic. That doesn't mean we're not going to be critical of different things, and we are. But faith is still a very big, powerful thing out there, even among a lot of people who don't observe, don't do anything overtly. They were respectful of that too. We didn't have a lot of negativity on that score either, which was also very important.
One of the things that affected me the most in this were the reactions that people had as part of the crew and the cast, and Mark rolls his eyes so many times because I say this again and again and again, talking about the concept of a safe space. Ready? Cue the eye roll. Give it to us, Mark. There it is.
To be clear, when he's coaching these actors, and it really took a lot of directing, they had to really put themselves out here for something. And so he said it to each one a few times. And the joke was just that from my perspective, I heard this like 40 times, but so that's the only reason. That's the background to that. I got treated to it a lot, but sorry to interrupt you all.
The idea is a safe space is necessary on every set that I have as a director, but also when I'm an actor, whenever I'm a creative person, and within advocacy, a safe space is necessary for everybody to safely be who they are and how they are, and just to be accepted, right? Let's call it radical acceptance or radical inclusion. Everybody's included. But a brave space goes further. The brave space is where not only are you able to be there as you are and who you are, but you must be brave enough to be vulnerable, to be authentic and sincere and genuine for your faults and for the things that are great about you, to maybe do something and fail or do something and succeed. That is the really amazing place as a content creator and as a storyteller. That's where the most compelling elements are shared. So creating that safe space, turning it into a brave space, ended up being very moving for the crew and for the cast. And we still get messages from people who said that it was a life-altering experience for them, that they discovered things about themselves. How often do you hear that when being part of a production? That's not something that's normally heard about, other than, wow, it was really cool to be on the set. I became better technically, right? That's amazing. I became a better director and a better interviewer and better producer because of this project. Technically.
That's awesome.
To know that it also changed people emotionally and spiritually and accepting the different parts of themselves. I'd say, even if that's all we achieve with the film, I'll consider this whole project a success. Of course, I want much more than that. I want audiences around the world to see this and make the village.
I wanted to ask you guys, real quickly, for anybody out there who's LGBTQ, who is having a conscience of faith, who's looking at faith, and what is your best advice for finding how to get the faith that they need?
That's exactly why we created this film. I keep hearing from the advocacy work that I do and encountering people who feel alone. This film is to make you, the greater you and the individual you out there, you are not alone. There are so many organizations out there. We tried to represent and bring in as many as we could. There are people who dedicate their lives to you, to help you. This film is an advocacy film to make sure that you are seen, that you will always know that you are not alone, that you are part of a community. And there's a community out there waiting with open hands, open arms, ready to embrace you and support you as you are and who you are. That's how we use this art form, not just the art of the project that's documented, but the art of the documentary itself, to be art that creates change, that art that will include you as you are, with all the complexities, with all your opinions, with all of your challenges, whether you like everything we do or none of what we do, you're still included, girl. Like, everybody's in.
You can usually find somebody who is like you to talk to. Everybody in the film has organizations and websites that have resources, not only just books and movies, but lists of churches and organizations that you can actually talk to. You're not alone. There's a whole community who feels put on just like you do, but there is great strength in numbers. And as I like to say when I'm doing ministry in this area, is this genie's out of the bottle. Okay, there's a lot of people who are still opposed, but we're not going to go away. The thinking on theology and acceptance is not going to go away. It's just going to keep growing. It's going to keep growing. And it ultimately comes down to what you want to do internally here. Of course, that's what a lot of faith is, but there really is a big community out there that can support you.
Beautiful art project that at the core is about healing and taking the hurt that's been put upon the LGBTQ community by religion and finding a way to shine a light on that hurt, but also shine a light on healing.
I saw something that took each of these people at a point of being in very much pain and walking that crucifixion to eventually to resurrection. And that gives an LGBT person hope.
I really wanted to be here to sort of see how this film, this vision, this question of who is holy and who gets to image the holiness, how that was going to be received by people.
If I would have seen images like that, I would not have suffered much internalized homophobia like many of us still suffer, and many of us did suffer back then because we was forced to be in the closet.
And the fact that Jesus can be a queer person, the fact that there is room for that to exist, I think just is something that is really going to help people.
I thought that the project was beautiful, and I wanted to see it on a big screen. I wanted people to see it on a big screen, and it was every bit as emotional as I thought it was going to be.